today's top boxing news. Ow!
Okay, we'll start with this, our expanded conversation as to what may be next for the reigning undisputed featherweight champion Amanda Serrano on the heels of her latest victory, and how she is insistent that anybody moving forward who wants to share the ring with her has to do it for 12 3-minute rounds, and how Sky Nicholson, unbeaten up-and-comer and amateur standout from Australia, says that she's willing to fight Amanda under any rules, any guidelines the WBC sets, it being that she is WBC interim champion. That is her route to a world title shot at Amanda Serrano. Put simply,
the World Boxing Council is not supportive of Amanda's stance, and they have maintained that they would only sanction a women's boxing match for 10 2-minute rounds, not 12 3-minute rounds.
Irrespective of that impasse that they may be on, whether it's 10 2-minute rounds or 12 3-minute rounds, I would have Amanda Serrano beating Sky Nicholson. I would have Amanda beating her handily, whether it's a lopsided points win based on activity or a knockout.
You're likely telling yourself, well, Amanda hasn't knocked anybody out in a really long time.
So how are you so sure that she'd knock out Sky Nicholson? Why are you so sure that she would beat her? And it's because Sky is not as experienced or proven to be as durable as Heather Hardy or Danila Ramos for that matter. Sky has yet to fight the kind of fighters that those fighters have fought. Sky hasn't earned all her stripes yet, in spite of how confident she may seem outwardly. The reality of it is there's more work needs doing when it comes to Sky Nicholson. And even if she has positioned herself for a shot at Amanda via the WBC, that doesn't actually mean she's ready for Amanda. That doesn't actually mean she wins that fight.
A couple of years ago, Erickson Lubin, a then unbeaten Erickson Lubin, he positioned himself for a shot at the WBC by way of Jermel Charlo, who was WBC champion at the time, still is, and he got knocked out in 35 seconds into the first round?
You think about the fighters that Amanda Serrano has been fighting the last year, 2 years or so. You're talking about fighters that are a lot more experienced than Sky Nicholson. Danila Ramos, Heather Hardy, Erica Cruz of Mexico, Sarah Mahfoud of Denmark, champions or world title challengers or former world champions.
You think that Sky Nicholson has a higher ceiling than those fighters do, that overall she's a more talented boxer than those boxers are. You tell yourself that.
I think that perhaps to some degree that's true, but who told you that she's anywhere as tough, as durable as they are? She's not actually as battle-tested as any of them, that when she's backed into a corner and she's pushed, does she have the intestinal fortitude?
Can she work under pressure? Because she's gonna have to.
I've no doubts that by now, Sky Nicholson has taken in the Danila Ramos fight, and she's telling herself, my movement's a lot better than Danila Ramos's. My jab, my speed, I'm a younger, fresher fighter.
I can win.
While I myself will not begrudge her ambition or her belief in her abilities, because she has to believe in herself. If nobody else does, she does. I don't begrudge her that. I don't agree with her either. There's more to this than staying on the outside and pot-shotting, throwing the occasional jab and backhand.
Whether it's 10 2-minute rounds or 12 3-minute rounds, Amanda beats her.
I don't see it any other way, even though Sky Nicholson might be telling herself that Amanda's got slower feet than I've got, slower hands too in the Ramos fight. She wasn't able to effectively cut off the ring to pin Danila Ramos down and unload, get her out of there.
My question is, who says you can take what Danila Ramos can take? Danila's been in there with Katharina Thander, she's been in there with Elham Khaled.
Who says? Because experience is the best teacher, after all. Experience is the best teacher, and you're not as experienced as Danila Ramos. So even if you have some of the right ingredients, how long are they going to hold up? How long are they going to hold up under pressure? Because I've seen many a polished boxer start to come apart at the seams under pressure. Under the pressure of what are seemingly more crude fighters and crude boxers than themselves. Pressure busts pipes.
Zelfa Barrett getting pressured by Rakhimov.
Remember that?
Rashidi Ellis getting pressured by Roman Villa. Arislandi Lara getting pressured by Jarrett Hurd.
Tony Harrison getting pressured by Jarrett Hurd. And Willie Nelson and Tim Tszyu.
Finesse fighters, pure boxers. They don't like pressure. Yeah, maybe you can move around and pot shot a bit at the start. Maybe that'll work for the first 2 to 3 rounds.
Maybe you'll do all right for the first 2 to 3 rounds. You know, Danila Ramos, who she just fought, she was doing all right for the first 2 to 3 rounds.
I think if you swapped out Danila for Sky, and that's who Amanda was fighting this past weekend, that same kind of fight, that same kind of volume, that same kind of pressure, Sky don't hear the final bell.
And what is Sky Nicholson expecting? Is she expecting to box Amanda Serrano on a Matchroom show as opposed to a most valuable promotion? Is Sky forgetting who the A-side fighter here is, who the champion is?
Ice skating around the ring, taking a tour of the turnbuckles, throwing the jab and the occasional backhand, the occasional straight left hand. You think you're gonna win a decision that way?
10 2-minute rounds or 12 3-minute rounds. I wouldn't pick Sky Nicholson to win that fight if that was her next fight or the fight after that. The amount of experience she would need to be ready for somebody like Amanda Serrano, I just don't see it, not in the near future. I don't know if they're going to fight because the World Boxing Council and Amanda, they're in an impasse over this rounds and how many minutes in a round. They're in an impasse over that. But if they were fighting, if Amanda and Sky were fighting, I'd confidently go with Amanda Serrano to win.
Because my entire life I have respected boxing. And to find out that boxing is fake, I don't mean that the decision was corrupted. You cannot be a real sport. You cannot, by any means, be a real sport. This is the second time I've seen the best in the world in boxing, the absolute best in their prime in boxing, get beaten up by a guy with zero experience. One of them was a drunk cokehead and still beat the hell out of the greatest boxer.
To who is Chael Sonnen referring to? Is he talking about when Conor McGregor fought Floyd Mayweather? Floyd Mayweather, who is a naturally smaller, and much older man than Conor McGregor. Not even a heavy-handed puncher, hadn't been a hard puncher, a knockout puncher in some years. He was barely a welterweight. By all accounts, Floyd wasn't a real welterweight. This guy started out, what was it, 130 pounds? Is that what Chael is talking about? Why is it that Chael now views boxing as fake? He's saying it's a fake sport. It's not a sport.
We all know why. It's because of the disgraceful performance that Tyson Fury just put on. Tyson Fury, who some regaled as the greatest heavyweight of this era, and some regaled as the greatest heavyweight that ever lived. I didn't.
But some people did. And it's because of those people and because of that perception that Chael Sonnen now views the sport of boxing as not being a sport at all. Someone should ask him whether or not it's a real sport.
Whether or not it was real to Patrick Day. Whether or not it was real to Maxim Dadashev or Ginat Zapata. Was it real to Phoenix Ayala, who sat in a coma for weeks based on the injuries she sustained from the sport of boxing? And what about Pritchard Colon? What about Nick Blackwell?
The sport is fake. What are you telling me? That those injuries are fake? That the injuries they're still dealing with, that will be with them for the rest of their lives, all of that is fake. Based on what? Based on Tyson Fury being a charlatan? This is the collective grief and the collective embarrassment that the world of boxing is experiencing for those who actually propped up this charlatan.
This phony, who I told you was a phony, who I told you was a fraud.
I think it was middleweight contender of the United Kingdom, Denzel Bentley, who said it best. Boxing didn't get embarrassed yesterday. Tyson Fury got embarrassed yesterday. And if you need any further evidence of that, put that same Francis Ngannou that sat Tyson Fury on his back pocket. Put that same Francis Ngannou with someone else. Someone who's not heralded as the king of the sport and the greatest heavyweight that ever lived. Just put him in there with your run-of-the-mill contender. Put him in there with Arslanbek Makhmudov. Put him in there with Bakadir Jalalov. Put him in there with Martin Bakoli instead of Tyson Fury. Put him in there with those guys. Put him in there with those guys who don't have a big media marketing machine behind them. Put him in there with your regular run-of-the-mill guy that you find in the rank standings and watch what happens.
It won't happen because those fighters don't have a big media marketing machine behind them. It won't happen because there's not as much money in those fights to warrant the risks. Warrant the risk to Francis Ngannou. The truth.
Fury was never our best, and this idea that he was the greatest heavyweight that ever lived for beating Klitschko and Wilder. That's all you have to do to surpass Joe Louis, to surpass Muhammad Ali, to surpass Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis and Mike Tyson and just Larry Holmes, all these great guys. All you gotta do is have an ugly fight with Klitschko and beat a one-handed puncher in Bambi and Wilder, and that's it. You're the king.
Eke out a decision in a very, very ugly fight with Vlad, take 2 years off, come back, fight Bambi 3 times. That makes you the king of boxing.
If it weren't for the big media marketing machine calling him that, Chael Sonnen likely wouldn't be saying this. He wouldn't be feeling this way. But I don't think the bodies of Patrick Day and Maxim Dadashev and Ginette Zapata are in the ground because boxing is fake.
No, boxing isn't fake. Tyson Fury is what's fake. That's what's fake. His claim towards being this era's best heavyweight, that was never proven nor earned. And his claim that he's the greatest heavyweight that ever lived, that wasn't proven nor earned either. If anything is fake, it's not the sport of boxing, it's Tyson Fury.
And that's what I've been telling you the whole time. If I have a bone to pick, it's not even really with Chael Sonnen so much as the idea that all these men and women are grafting and working hard, and they should be taken down a peg because Tyson Fury is a charlatan, because Tyson Fury is a fraud, because he's little more than just a guy they hyped up.
For beating a hype job. These practices from Tyson Fury, his selectiveness is not a new development. He's been this way the whole time. He pulled out on Ustinov. He pulled out on Pulev.
Back when David Price was the UK's sweetheart, a highly touted, heavy-handed puncher, it's not a coincidence Tyson Fury never got around to fighting him, eking out an ugly decision against Vladimir, then skipping out on the rematch.
The con job about his mental health when he was really just avoiding being investigated by UCAT and the BBBOC. The con job about donating his entire purse to charity.
After the first Wilder fight, and the Wilder fights, that trilogy, entertaining as it might have been, it hardly crowned this era's best heavyweight, let alone the greatest heavyweight of all time. All that happened was he took that situation, blew it out of proportion, and a lot of people ate it up.
It's a sucker born every day. Ain't that what they say?
If Chael Sonnen can take all of boxing down a peg based on Fury being a fraud, can't we do that to mixed martial arts? Why are Tyrone Woodley, Ben Askren, and Dylan Dennis losing to YouTubers? Not even real boxers. YouTubers.
Why is Victor Belfort getting the daylights knocked out of him by an over-the-hill Kubrat Pulev, who isn't even one of our best fighters?
This is why I've never been a fan of these crossovers, because they keep this ridiculous conversation going about MMA versus boxing.
When all these crossover matches really are shameless spectacles and cash grabs.
That's all they are, and that's all they've ever been. And Tyson Fury, contrary to the opinions of a few, was never this era's best heavyweight, and never the greatest heavyweight of all times. That was always bullshit. Now, retired Froch reacted to Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou, saying, Ngannou boxed brilliantly. I thought he won by 2 or 3 rounds. Fury versus Alexander Usyk is signed. That's the reason I think Ngannou didn't get the nod. It's corruption at the highest level. Fury's talking about, I'm not bothered about my legacy. It's a good job he's not, because at the minute, his legacy is in tatters. And what is Tyson Fury's legacy? What is it really? That he fought the same guy, the same limited, one-handed fighter 3 times over the course of 5 years, and for that, they crowned him the greatest heavyweight of this era and the greatest heavyweight of all times. That's his legacy.
You can trace all the hyperbole associated with Tyson Fury back to Wilder, back to 2018, because that's when and where it starts.
And I'm not one of these bandwagoners who all of a sudden became familiar with Tyson Fury when he decided to come to America and rebrand himself after being a disgrace in the UK. For a number of years when he was there climbing up the ranks en route to the Klitschko fight, he wasn't viewed as their most highly touted heavyweight, let alone the best in the world. He has that stinker with Vladimir Klitschko, puts his foot in his mouth, saying some inflammatory things about a lot of groups of people.
He tests positive for a banned substance, at which point he's investigated by the BBBOC and UCAT, at which point he uses mental health to get out of the Klitschko rematch and absconds for 2 years, up until Wilder tried to use him as an alternative to AJ.
Because it is Deontay Wilder who brought him back to heavyweight boxing, championship boxing, voluntarily giving him a title shot he neither earned or deserved, as a cherry pick, an alternative to an AJ fight because he couldn't have his way with AJ. He couldn't get half.
Didn't have enough leverage in negotiations to get the kind of numbers that he wanted, so he sought out Tyson Fury as an alternative, and it blew up in his face. The rest, as they say, is history. The history of 2 fucking hype jobs.
One of which the media and some fight fans had the fucking audacity to claim was the greatest heavyweight of this era and the greatest heavyweight of all times because they sought refuge with each other for 4 and 5 years?
Consider that the vast majority of boxing fans will tell you that Tyson Fury beat Deontay Wilder 3 times. Not just 2, not just the last 2, he won the first one as well.
That the vast majority of people that saw that entire trilogy never came away thinking Wilder won at least one of those fights, at least one. But Francis Ngannou, he just did better against Fury than Wilder did. Wilder, who fought Fury 3 times. So what does that tell you about Wilder?
That he couldn't have been that good because a guy who never boxed before just did better against Fury than he did.
And what does that tell you about Fury for having beaten Wilder?
That it couldn't have been a big deal because Wilder was never that good to begin with.
A house of cards that falls apart at the foundation because neither Deontay Wilder or Tyson Fury were ever really the number 1 and 2 guys at the weight. People just wanted to think that.
And that's because the media and the powers that be told them to, so they did.
And these are not new sentiments I'm expressing to you as a result of Fury versus Ngannou. Not just, I've been telling you this the whole time. Whatever it is people are running around saying about Tyson Fury now is not based on anything that happened before he fought Deontay Wilder, because nobody thought he was the best in the world for that stinker that he had with Vlad. It's beating Wilder you can trace it all back to, and beating Wilder, that should have never been blown out of proportion to begin with because Wilder was a fucking hype job. He was just looking for an alternative to an AJ fight. He didn't want to acquiesce to being the B-side, so he conjures up a semi-retired, light-punching Brit who's a bit of a character, who can help him sell a fight. A cherry pick gone wrong, and that's all it ever was. Fury wasn't known as a heavy-handed wrecking machine. He was known as a bit of a doofus with a nervous style of fighting, and he's light on power.
But he's got a silver tongue. He's a good talker. He can sell a fight.
It's the only reason Wilder fought him, and that's the main reason so many people are confused right now. Have they been misled about Tyson Fury? You absolutely have been, because you're gullible.